So what is given is what? 212, right? And 1.2.0, right? So that's a given. And then number of subnet needed is number of subnets needed is 20, right? So that's just given. So just like I said, if you look at the class C subnetting, right? There are 4 octets, right? There are 4 octets. And you know that the first 3 octets is reserved for the network portion, right? So this is network portions. And then we only, for the class C subnetting, right? We only play with the last octet, which is the 4th octet. And then somewhere here, right, we need to draw the line. And this number of bits used, I'll just represent as an X. And then the host portion, the number of bits used, the host portion is a Y, right? So we know that for the class C subnetting, X plus Y is always what? 8, right? So basically this means we only play with the last octet, right? 4th octet when you deal with the class C subnetting, right? Okay, so and you know that this X will determine a number of subnets, right? And so when X is 1, meaning that only 1 bit is borrowed from the host portion, right? Only 1 bit. Then basically 2 to the X. So we have what? You can speak up. We can have. Yes, go ahead. Yes?
If X is 1, then 2 to the power of 1 is 2.
Yes. No, actually, when X is a 1, the 2 to the power of 1 is actually 2. Yes. But this means we can only create 2 subnets, right? With a 1 bit. And what is required is 20, right? So I have to go further. And when X is equal to 2, right? And 2 to the power of X is what? 4, right? So we need to we can create 4 subnets. However, it's much less than what is required, right? So I'm gonna go one more, and then 2 to the X is what? It's 8, right? Because it's 2 times 2 times 2. And still below 20 when X is equal to 4, right? And then 2 to the power of 4 is 16, right? So I have to go further because still it's below. With the 4 bits, I can only create 16 subnets, right? Which is still below what is required. So I'm going to go one more. X is 5, and 2 to the power of X is what? 32. And yes, right? And with the 5 bits, I can create 32 subnets. Therefore, definitely I can create 20. Yes, the thing is you can go further, but that's wasting your the subnet space, right? So I'm gonna stop here. Of course, when X is 6 and then 2 to the X is 64, yes, you can still create 20 subnets, but that's wasting my subnet bits, right? So I'm gonna stop here. So now my answer is what? What is my X? X is a 5, right? So since X is a 5, and what is my Y? 3, right? Okay, good. Thank you. So the X is a 5 and Y is a 3, right? So from this, right? From this, we know that it's okay. So we can create what? How many? We can create 32 subnets, and the Y is a 3 means what? Okay, in Y is a 3, there are two things. That means 2 to the Y minus 2 means this tells you the number of what? The host addresses, usable host addresses per each subnet, right? So that means 2 to the 3 minus 2, right? So that means 6, right? So that means each block, right? Each block you can have 6 usable host IP addresses, right? And then another thing that it tells you that it's, okay, so this is 6 usable host IP addresses per subnet, right? And another thing is it can tell us about the block size of each subnet. So basically it's a 2 to the y, right? Basically in this case is 2 to the 3 and this is 8. So this means each subnet, right? The block size of each subnet is 8 because you have 2 usable IP addresses, right? Plus 2 means 1 for the what? Network address and another for the broadcast address, right? So you can have total, so your block size, right, for each subnet is 8, right? Okay, having said that, so I can use a formula, right? Basically, I mean, by looking at this information, right? If you want to like draw everything, like what's really going on, right? If you want to learn, if you want to know everything, right? Then I highly recommend that you can draw this IP diagram, right? For example, this is given, right? And for example, 212.1.2.0, right? So this is 0, 0, 0, 0. Because class is subnetting, the last 4th octet is important. So I'm going to expand this, right? And then 255.255.255. Right? With x is a 5, I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So I can draw the line here. Right? Okay. So my first IP address is definitely 1.2. Right? Hold on. Yeah. So basically 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Let me just do, so this is like another line. This is for the class C, right? Okay. And then this is my first, the network address. This is a network address of my first subnet, right? And obviously my second subnet, right? My second subnet is gonna be somewhere here, right? After this, my second subnet is what? 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, right? And then it's gonna be 0, 0, 0. So I'm asking you, so if you look at the problem, right? The problem said that what is the network address of the second subnet? So this is like a first subnet, right? And this is my second subnet. So my IP address for my second subnet is 212.1.2.00001.000. So if you convert this, right? So if you convert this, you can convert this binary bit to the decimal, right? Then you can get the network address of the second subnet, right? And the broadcast IP address of, by the way, the broadcast IP address of the first subnet is what? 212.1.2. So by the way, this is broadcast, right? Broadcast address of the first subnet is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And host portion all being 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay? And by the way, if you want to find the broadcast address of the second subnet, right? The broadcast address of the second subnet is what? Subnet portion is the same, right? And then your host portion is all ones. So if you convert this into decimal form, right? You can get the broadcast address of the second subnet, right? But this is something that I want you to know. This is something that you must know, especially when you have a job interview and etc. Right? But for the test, right? There's another way, right? I told you, right? Another way is what? you can first, you need to find the block size, right? Right? You need to find the block size, and you know that the block size is 8, right? And there's another formula you can use. So you can find the block size from the 2 to the y, right? Or I told you that there is a formula, right? Which is, since for the class C, we are only interested in the fourth octets, right? Another interesting thing, another formula you may use is what? 256 minus, right? And for this, when x is a 5, right? So 0, 0, 0. So this subnet mask, the subnet mask is what? 248. 240 what? Sorry. 248. What is your name, by the way?
Pierre.
Yeah, Pierre. Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's 248, right? So that's a 248. And you know that this is last 248, right? And this is like a last octet. This is 248, right? So we can use what? 2 minus 248. And this is what? This is 8, right? So this is, again, this is what? This is a block size. Block size of each subnet, which is 8. Right? So you can use this formula, right? You can use this formula to get the block size, or you can simply get the block size by 2 to the y, right? Either way is fine. I just want you to show that they are related, right? This formula is really comes from this. Okay? So this block size is 8. So that means, right? That means the subnet address, right? The subnet address, if you look at the subnet, try to find the valid subnet address. This really like multitude of what? 8, right? So that means 0, 8, and what? 16, and then what? 20, 4, and etc. Right? So that means your first subnet mask, your first network address is what is it? 212.1.2.0, right? 0. And then the second subnet address is, the valid second subnet address is 212.1.2.8, right? Okay. And then third one is going to be 12.1.2.16, right? And then you can just all the way, right? So any question? Okay, so having said that, right? So what is the answer? What is the answer?
True.
It's true. So what is the network address of the second subnet? It's 212.1.2, right? So the answer is true. Okay. So I want you to, okay, let me just, let me see, the network address of the second subnet is 212.1.2, and then another thing. In this problem, right? No, actually, okay, so I'm done. Actually, I'm done. So I'm good. Okay. So, and then broadcast IP address. Okay, by the way, if I ask you, okay, this is an interesting question. If I ask you, what is a broadcast? This is not on the quiz, but I can ask you these questions. What is the broadcast address of the second subnet? What is it? Any volunteer? Broadcast address of the second subnet.
212.1.2.7?
No.
No, 15. Sorry.
15. Thank you. What is your name?
Kevin.
No, actually, who said 15?
50?
Okay. Yes. Your answer is yes. The answer is yes. 15. Thank you. So why? Because the best way. Okay. So when I ask you to find the broadcast address, like for example, broadcast address of the second subnet, right? I asked the second subnet. Then what is the best way? The best way is to find the valid network address, right? Address of the third subnet, and then you minus 1. Okay? So for example, I asked the second subnet, right? Then you have to find the valid network address of the third subnet, which is 16, right? And then 16 minus 1 means 15. Okay? So this broadcast address is 2.15. Right? So when I ask you to find the broadcast address of, let's say, third subnet, then the first thing you should do is what? Find the valid network address of the fourth subnet, and etc. Right? And then simply minus 1. So any question? Okay. So I'm done. I'm done with the class. So I'm done with the class C subnetting. Thank you.